If they want to think to take on government, if we get out of line, which they're talking again about, well, guess what? They need F-15s. They don't need a rifle.
Well, fresh off the news of his son being convicted on federal gun charges, Joe Biden delivered a speech to Everytown for gun safety. Wait, that can't be right. Are you serious? Wait, isn't that the Moms Demand Action? That's a big Bloomberg-funded anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment gun control place. Well, surely they canceled this invitation the day they found out that his son was guilty of violating the very laws that they forced onto the books, right? In fact, it's one of the most common. Usually, their gun control laws are not common sense, but this one actually was. You don't want a drug addict going out and getting a 38 special. I mean, they might do God knows what with it. They might leave it in a trash can across the street from a high school so somebody can take it and shoot up some innocent students, right? That's exactly what this group is opposed to. Okay. Joe Biden went ahead and delivered his remarks there anyway. That must have been awkward. Here's a couple of things that Joe Biden had to say to the anti-Second. And let's just be clear here. All of the laws that this group tries to cram down your throats are designed to tick you off. They're just designed to divide us. These groups don't really care about gun safety. If they did, they would not back the party that doesn't prosecute crimes involving guns. If they cared about safety in our streets, they wouldn't back the party who has been opening up the jails and letting people out scot-free. This is about dividing us. This is about political power. And it's about making you angry. That's what Joe Biden does. That's what these groups do. So he took a show on the road after his own son violated federal gun laws and was convicted. And he addressed the moms who demand action.
I've attended too many mass shootings. I've gone to too many schools across America.
Joe Biden has attended too many mass shootings. Now, we're going to give you lots of examples of Joe Biden's brain being made up of mashed potatoes, but just understand, it's really just a stutter. He's really just struggling with a stutter, like in this case.
Who in God's name needs a magazine which can hold 200 shells?
Who in God's name needs a magazine that can hold 200 shells? By the way, sometimes it's 100, sometimes it's 30, sometimes he calls it a clip. But this time, it's a great combination. Whenever he speaks like this, I have a vision of Cam Edwards, our pal at Town Hall who runs Bearing Arms. He's a firearms expert, gun law expert. I just imagine him turning red and screaming back at the television. Who in God's name needs a magazine that holds 200 shells?
Who in God's name needs a magazine which can hold 200 shells?
The straw men who are being held up to be burned in effigy at this event is very well. I think there's going to be a run on straw in the Midwest. Farmers better beware. Here's another.
You can't be pro-law enforcement and say you are pro-law enforcement and be pro-abolishing the AFT.
You can't be pro-law enforcement and be pro-abolishing the AFT. Well, the AFT is the American Federation of Teachers. That's Randy Weingarten's teachers union. And I can tell you that I am, in fact, pro-law enforcement, and I'm also in favor of abolishing Randy Weingarten's teachers union. So that's just fact check false. However, remember, the president has mashed potatoes for brains, and I'm pretty sure what he meant was the ATF, not the AFT. But that doesn't matter. They'll give him a standing ovation anyway.
Instead of trying to stop our ban on ghost gun kits that contain these commit crimes. They're working like hell to stop it.
I'm not sure what just happened. This is, again, one of those malfunctions where the wires are crossed. Somebody rebooted him backstage in the middle of a sentence. If you can work this out, please leave it in the comments below. What exactly is he saying here? Just as a public service for everyone else watching the video, you tell me, what's your best guess? What is he saying here?
Instead of trying to stop our ban on ghost gun kits that contain these commit crimes, they're working like hell to stop it.
It's just a stutter, guys. His brain is functioning top notch. Don't believe what the Wall Street Journal said. He's the most brilliant, articulate president. It's a minor stutter. He's struggled his whole life with it. You want more? We got more.
I was no longer the vice president. I became a professor at the University of Pennsylvania. Before that, I taught a constitutional law class, and so I taught the Second Amendment. There's never been a time that says you can own anything you want. You couldn't own a cannon during the Civil War. No, I'm serious. Think about it. How many times have you heard this phrase? The blood of liberty. Wash of dough. Give me a break.
Okay, this one's worth a full breakdown and analysis. I let you see all 27 seconds without breaking. Now we got plenty of things to discuss. Let's start it from the beginning again, shall we? Hold my hand. Let's walk down the lane of Joe Biden's dementia.
I was no longer the vice president. I became a professor at the University of Pennsylvania.
He was never a professor at the University of Pennsylvania. He was paid by the University of Pennsylvania. By the way, coincidentally or not so coincidentally, the University of Pennsylvania also got huge gifts from the Communist Chinese Party. Were there strings attached, and was some of that money designed specifically to flow to the big guy? Only time and a few more cleverly placed subpoenas will tell. But he was never a professor, and he never taught a class.
Before that, I taught a constitutional law class, and so I taught the Second Amendment.
He never taught a constitutional law class. Ever. Ever.
There's never been a time that says you can own anything you want.
Actually, there was a time where you could own anything you want. Now, maybe he's saying, since the formation of the United States of America and the federal government that we now live under, maybe, but when we were colonies, you certainly could own whatever you want. And by the way, the point he's about to make is also fake, but we'll let him make it first.
Never. You couldn't own a cannon during the Civil War.
You could own a cannon during the Civil War. You could own a cannon during the Revolutionary War. In fact, you can own a cannon today. He says this all the time. He repeats it over and over again. He has been fact-checked up his skinny little wazoo, and he still says it, unchecked, unchallenged. There's no one in his inner circle who says, sir, just stop saying that. It's just false. You can own a cannon. Go get one. They're fun.
No, I'm serious. Think about it. How many times have you heard this phrase? The blood of liberty. Wash of dough. Give me a break.
I think what he's saying is the tree of liberty is watered with the blood of tyrants. That's a Thomas Jefferson phrase. He can't even say it properly. But that's your president. And by the way, he's mocking anybody who believes in the constitutional right to self-defense and to bear arms. And he's making fun of you and ridiculing you. Remember when I said these groups exist to divide us? It's made to order for this guy because his whole political career has been about dividing us. You know, you got to hand it to Barack Obama. At least with his radical positions on guns, and he had the same radical positions that Joe Biden has, at least he made an effort. You know, he'd put on the mom jeans and go to Camp David and shoot skeet, you know. He at least attempted to pander to you. This guy, he holds you in such contempt, in such venomous contempt, that he gets off on pissing you off. He enjoys it. And it's really the only way he can solidify his political base is to continue to divide us. See, the more united we are in this country, the more irrelevant people like Joe Biden are. And so that's why this is where he's going to thrive. Which brings us to the pièce de résistance, the thing that he loves to say all the time when he's making fun of you as a gun owner and a proud advocate of the Second Amendment.
By the way, if they want to think to take on government, if we get out of line, which they're talking again about, well, guess what? They need F-15s. They don't need a rifle.
Okay, let's break this down a little bit. First of all, it's a complete misconception when he says, people have to have, they say they have to have guns to keep the government in check if we ever get out of line. That's not exactly the correct characterization, but I will say this. One of the reasons why we have had such a stable government for nearly 250 years now in this country is because whatever government is in power at any given time, they know that they have an armed citizenry. They also, up until a very short time ago, had a citizenry who were well trained and well familiar with the military, because so many of Americans had been participants in the military or had family members in the military. That's not actually common in other countries, less stable countries. Neither of those things are true in other stable countries. By the way, in terms of gun ownership, keeping the government in line, all you have to do is read the Federalist Papers. James Madison and Alexander Hamilton were pretty clear about this being a fundamental element as to why the Second Amendment was necessary. Not some fringe benefit, not a good idea, necessary for the formation of our government. Now, you may not like that. I do love how Democrats and liberals, they love the hip-hop rapping Latino Alexander Hamilton on Broadway. But when they actually see the real-life Alexander Hamilton, not their favorite guy. But like it or not, that's why we have a Second Amendment in the first place. I got to say, I have grudging respect for Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. He hates you. He hates guns. He hates the Second Amendment. But he doesn't try to do this. He doesn't try to mock you for actually having a true, honest, and educated understanding of the Second Amendment and why it was put in place in the first place and why it must remain. Gavin Newsom knows that. He acknowledges it. He's the only one out there saying, let's repeal the Second Amendment. I mean, that truly is, it's never going to happen, but that truly is the only intellectually honest position to take. Not these people who try to craft laws to make you, the law-abiding gun owner, have to conform to their tyrannical regulations that they try to put in place. The criminals aren't going to follow those laws. Let's face it. They're trying to stop murders in this country. So what are they going to do? They're going to put in more regulations and more laws against owning guns. But they can't outlaw owning a gun because they acknowledge the Second Amendment exists. So instead, they put in all of these regulations and provisions that make it harder to get a gun. And who does that affect? It affects the law-abiding citizens who will actually give a crap about not wanting to break these laws that they pass. But see, the criminals, they don't care about these new laws. They're more than happy to break these new laws. You know why? Because they're criminals. If they're willing to break the law against, murder, then maybe they're going to break the law against lying on a form to get a new gun, or a waiting period for getting a new gun, or whatever other stupid idea they have. Gavin Newsom's the only one who's actually being honest out there that says, yeah, we got to repeal the Second Amendment. Okay, bring it on. Let's have that debate. Let's see how the American people will reward you. But back to Joe Biden here. Because what he's doing is, first of all, setting up a straw man. He is making a ridiculing caricature of over half of this country who believe in the Second Amendment and believe that gun ownership and the right to bear arms is critically important to the security of our nation. And he is mocking you in the most despicable and divisive way. Once again.
By the way, if they want to think to take on government, if we get out of line, which they're talking again about, well, guess what? They need F-15s. They don't need a rifle.
And this last point that I want to make, because I wanted to show it to you one more time, is probably the most disturbing of all, because he's mocking the idea that the American people will keep their government in line through personal gun ownership and the right to bear arms in one's own home. He's mocking that idea by reminding you that if Joe Biden, as president of the United States and commander in chief, wanted to, he could just order F-16s to mow you down. I don't think that's the best way to assuage American citizens who feel sometimes that they're actually the enemy of their own government because of their own political philosophies and political views. You know, if you're trying to tamp down hostilities in this country and paranoia and anger between the divisive political body politic that you have helped create, maybe, just maybe, you shouldn't raise the specter of F-16s being ordered to murder innocent citizens. But Joe Biden doesn't think in those terms. Joe Biden thinks in terms of furthering the divisions in this country and reminding you that he's got control of the jets. One other thing. This is a fundamental misunderstanding and disrespect of the American military. Because, see, to order that F-16 to mow you down, it would require a pilot from the United States Navy or Marines or Air Force to get behind the stick of that F-16 and to follow an order that was given to him to go and kill innocent Americans. And see, one of the reasons why having the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms and an armed citizenry is important is because usually the kids who grew up in households that had guns and had a respect for firearms and the notion of our Constitution, those are the kids that grow up and end up joining the military. And that kid ordered behind into the cockpit of an F-16 to murder an American citizen, that kid probably is somehow related to that American citizen, or at least sees his own parents in that American citizen's eyes. Hate to tell you this, Joe, but that ain't going to happen. You're on the wrong side of this one. Typically on the wrong side of it. By the way, Joe Biden was delivering these remarks to this anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment group just moments after his son got convicted on federal gun charges. He was delivering these remarks while at the very same time, over at the White House, just down the street from this conference, Karine Jean-Pierre was set to give a press briefing and answer questions from the media about those convictions. And then this happened.
Kayla Tausche live for us at the White House. Kayla, we'll let you get to that press briefing that was obviously delayed by the president's remarks. It actually just got canceled.
Yeah, we just learned that.
Whoops.
Briefing canceled after the president's son was convicted.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a quick break.
I do love it when the CNN anchors learn news from reading the Monitor in their own studio on the Chiron. Yeah, it's shocking that Karine Jean-Pierre would cancel that briefing. Just think of some of the questions that could have been asked. For years, the president has said that his son did nothing wrong. Now, should he revisit that? Did he always knew that he did something wrong, except he was lying on behalf of his son to the American people? Or is the president surprised that a jury has convicted his son? In fact, does the president disagree with what the jury concluded here, considering he's always said his son did and nothing wrong? Does he agree now that maybe his son did do something wrong? Actually, Karine, forget that question. I've got another question. The key, most important piece of evidence in the conviction of Hunter Biden was the laptop. The Justice Department, Joe Biden's Justice Department, entered that laptop in as a key piece of evidence. The jury found it to be compelling, and they used that evidence to convict Hunter Biden. So since the president said during a debate 2 weeks before the election that that laptop was Russian disinformation, does he stand by that statement? And given the fact that his Justice Department used that laptop as evidence to convict Hunter Biden, can we now look at all of the other things that are on that laptop that are way more important and way more dangerous to the American people and implicate the big guy, President Biden? Can we look at all that evidence now? Or is that stuff still Russian disinformation? Karine, have you got an answer? Do you have something on your crosstabs there in the book about that? Anything? Anything at all? I guess now we know why they canceled that press conference.